If he lacked a moral sense in life, he does not come together with members of his family and with his friends, but his own nature creates a kind of barrier that prevents him from reaching the other beings. A man with an immoral disposition becomes a hermit after death, an isolated being who always has a kind of barrier around him and cannot get through it to the other beings into whose sphere he has passed. The soul with a moral disposition, the soul whose ideas are the outcome of purified will, becomes a sociable spirit and invariably finds the bridges and connections with the beings in whose sphere he is living. Whether we are isolated or sociable spirits is determined by our moral or immoral disposition of soul. Now, this has important consequences. A sociable spirit, one who is not enclosed in the shell of his own being, but can make contact with other beings in his spheres, working fruitfully for the progress of evolution and of the whole world. An immoral man, who after his death becomes a hermit, an isolated spirit, is working at the destruction of the world. He makes holes, as it were, in the texture of the universe, commensurate with the degree of his immorality and consequent isolation. The effect of the immoral deeds of such a man is for him torment, for the world destruction. A moral disposition of soul is therefore already of great significance shortly after the period of Kamaloka. It also determines destiny for the next, the Venus period. A different category of ideas also comes into consideration then. Ideas a man has evolved during life and that concern him when he enters the spiritual world. The ideas and conceptions are of a religious character. Religion again, we are sociable or isolated, hermit-like spirits. Depends upon whether we were or were not of a religious turn of mind during life on earth. After death, an irreligious soul feels as though enclosed in a capsule, a prison. True, such a soul is aware that there are beings around him, but he feels as though he were in a prison and unable to reach them. As, for example, the members of the monistic union, inasmuch as with their barren materialistic ideas they have excluded all religious feeling, will not be united in a new community or union after death, but each of them will be confined in his own prison. Naturally, this is not meant as an attack upon the monistic union. It is merely a question of making a certain fact intelligible. In the life on earth, materialistic ideas are an error, a fallacy. In the realm of the spirit, they are a reality. Ideas which here in the physical world merely have the effect of making us shut ourselves off, incarcerate us in the realm of the spirit, make us prisoners of our own astrality. Through an immoral conception of life, we deprive ourselves of forces of attraction in the Mercury sphere. Through an irreligious disposition of soul, we deprive ourselves of forces of attraction in the Venus sphere. We cannot draw from this sphere the forces we need, which means that in the next incarnation we shall have an astral body that in a certain respect is imperfect. Here you see how karma takes shape, the technique of forming karma. These findings of occult investigation throw a remarkable light on an utterance Kant made, as though instinctively. He said that the two things that inspired the greatest wonder in him were the starry heavens above and the moral law within. These are apparently two things the feeling awakens. Before you come down to earth and to a new incarnation, you yourself were in those stars. And out of the stars have come the highest forces that are within you. Your moral law was imparted to you when you were dwelling in this world of stars. When you practice self-knowledge, you can behold what the starry heaven bestowed upon you between death and a new birth, the best and finest powers of your soul. What we behold in the starry heavens is the moral law that is given us from the spiritual worlds. For between death and a new birth, we live in these starry heavens. A man who longs to discover the source of the highest qualities he possesses should contemplate the starry heavens with feelings such as these. To one who has no desire to ask anything, but lives his life in a state of dull apathy, to him the stars will tell nothing. But if one asks oneself, How does there enter into me that which is never connected with my bodily senses? And then raises his eyes to the starry heaven. He will be filled with a feeling of reverence and will know that this is the memory of man's eternal home. Between death and rebirth, we actually live in the starry heavens. We have asked how our astral body is built up anew in the spiritual world, and the same question can be asked about our etheric body. This body, too, we cannot help destroying during our life, and again we must obtain from elsewhere the forces enabling us to build it up again, to make it fit to perform its work for the whole man during life. There were long, long stretches of time in human evolution on Earth when man was unable to contribute anything at all toward ensuring that his man still had within him a heritage, times when his existence on Earth began. As long as the ancient clairvoyance continued, there still remained in man forces that death had not reserved, forces, as it were, by means of which the etheric body could again be built up. But it lies in the essence of human evolution that all forces eventually pass away and must be replaced by new ones. Today we have reached a point when man must do something himself in order that his etheric body may be built up again. Everything that we do is a result of our ordinary moral ideas. Whatever response we make to a religion, limited as it may be to a particular people, with all this we pass into the planetary system and from there draw the forces for building up our astral body. There is only one sphere through which we pass without drawing from it these particular forces, the sun sphere itself. For it is out of the sun sphere that our etheric body must draw the forces, enabling it to be built up again. Conditions in pre-Christian times were such that as a man rose by stages into the spiritual world, he took with him part of the forces of the etheric body, and these reserve forces enabled him to draw from the sun what he needed for building his etheric body in a new incarnation. Today this has changed. It now happens more and more frequently that man remains unaffected by the forces of the sun. If he fails to do what is necessary for his etheric body by filling his soul with a content that can draw from the sun the forces required for the rebuilding of his etheric body, he passes through the sun sphere without being.
All right. Welcome to the show. This is Monday live stream Afterparty for Coast to Coast. I hope you are doing well. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be, whenever you Looks like my stream is not stable. Frozen. How about now? Sad. Let me see if I can make an adjustment here. If anything will change.
In point of fact, we know most about those religions that were able to serve their particular time and people by clinging egoistically to the form in which they originally issued from the fount of religious life.
Let's see, is it any better now? How we doing now? Let me check. How about now? Any better? If not, I'll jump out and back in and see if that'll help. It looks good on my end. I don't know about your end. Oh no, the Auntie Anthony is in the house. Okay, good now. Good, awesome. Welcome back to the Frank Monday live stream. Anthony is here. If anybody would like to join me in the chat, I'm gonna pop in the code right now. Bam, there it is. So if you know how to use StreamYard and you want to talk live here on the show, just let me know. Swing on over. I remind you, we are broadcasting live from Twilight Zone, Old Peking, here in the capital. Give a little welcome out to everybody. Welcome goes. It looks like it's cutting out a little bit here. Let me hold on just a second. Remove that. Stop screen share. All right, Mike, that might help. That might help. You never know with this shit. Let me see. Jeff's here. All right, let me get a shout out to everyone in the chat. Kelly's here. Jeff's here. Tracy's here. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Diane. Hi, Ian. Owen. Sorry, Owen. Hi, Y. Hi. If I miss anyone, let me know. Hi, Smile a While. Greetings and Happy New Year. How's the stream? Tracy's here. Owen, how you feeling? How are you feeling, Owen? You doing better, man? Diane's here. Stay away from the vaccines. All right, Anthony showed up. Good to see you, Anthony. Anthony is knocking it out of the park with staying away from the vaccines now. That's good. Yeah, I don't think that's the real Anthony, but what can you do, right? There's the link if anybody wants to jump in here and go head to head with old Mr. Monday. Yeah, that's right, Diane. The real Anthony would join me live. So it's suspicious that this is a genuine Anthony. If you guys don't know, we met OG Anthony over at the Coast to Coast chat. And yeah, that's not the real Anthony. I'm suspicious that it's not. Welcome to the new year, guys. How are you liking your new year so far? 2022 is... It's exciting to see all of you guys coming over to the park and joining for a topic. So the topic there at the Coaster Chat was, what was it? Azaram or Asnar or something. But I think that he's doing a play on Abdul al-Hazrad, the mad Arab of the Necronomicon fame. We first learned about him in the Call of Cthulhu. So let me see if I can pull that up. The Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, that's the one right there. So let me get that going in the background so that everyone can get on board with Lovecraft.
Call of Cthulhu, found among the papers of the late Francis Wayland Thurston of Boston. Such great powers or beings there may be conceivably a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested perhaps in the shapes and forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity, forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings.
Yeah, it's cold here too, Smile a While. You got to try to stay warm. Keep your wood burning fireplace fired up. Kelly, you still see that stream? Hello, oh my God, is that OG? No, that is not the OG Anthony, Little Fish. And welcome, Little Fish. Welcome, Tracy. Welcome, Smile a While. Good to see you, Jeff. Look, Jala's out there. Jiilaa. Wow, what a beautifully bearded individual. Huh? I like that goatee, Jala. Jila. Don't know if I can say that correctly. Feed drop. It looks like it's not stable, guys. Let me try to adjust my thing. Let me see if I can get a better... Yeah, there we go. Looks like it might be stable now.
Sorts and kinds. Algernon Blackwood.
Yes, it was Smile a While.
Fun. Horror in clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its contents.
We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little.
So that's being reiterated. I was listening to Rabbi Mordecai yesterday. He's pretty famous. I had never actually heard of him before, but he does a lot of commentary on the Kabbalah. And he was talking about the inability of the human mind to reach directly to the Godhead, at least from the standpoint of Kabbalistic understanding. And so he brought to mind the idea on the tree of life that at the top up here, that Keter All right, I had to reset real quick. I don't know if you can hear me. Give me a yo if you can hear me. Give me a yo out there in Happy Land if you can hear me.
Someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Theosophists have guessed at the awesome grandeur of the cosmic cycle wherein our world and human race form transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survivals in terms which would freeze the blood if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not from them that there came the single glimpse of forbidden eons which chills me when I think of it and maddens will accomplish this piecing out. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor, too, intended to keep silent regarding the part he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not sudden death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926 to 27, with the death of my granduncle, George Gamble Angel.
All right. In the winter, no coincidences there. Everything lines up on synchronicity. Whenever I transmit and stream, I always get some serious synchronicities from the background music. I've got the Tree of Life here, and I was going to talk about a little bit of the correspondences between the Tree of Life and the Chinese system of internal alchemy. If you've got a topic of interest, then put it out there in the chat, and I'll check the ideas room. I got an eye here on the ideas room, and I like to continue the ideas from the coast to coast chat. That way, it's genuinely an after party. All right. So that last guy on the coast to coast chat said that he was receiving telepathic transmissions from a jinn, an Arabic jinn, right? An Arabian genie. And so how does that relate to the Tree of Life? And how does the Tree of Life relate to Aladdin's lamp? So in the tradition of Chinese Taoist internal alchemy, the human A lot of people that are exposed to Buddhism or Hinduism will view the material plane as a kind of illusion. But in Taoism and esoteric Christianity, we view the body as the temple of the Lord, right? And the spirit dwells within the body and manifests into this realm in order to work on our own soul energy. So on the tree of life, our physical manifestation will be down here at Malkuth. And when we pull the energy of the divine down into the world, right, when we manifest into the world, this is a great opportunity for spiritual alignment of your divine spark, right? So in the basic ritual of the pentagram, we have Ata, Malkut, Vegubra, Vegudla, Leolam, Amen. And that brings the energy down from Keter into Malkut, right? So we have Ata, Malkut, Vegubra, Vegudla. And then at the center here, at Tifereth, Leolam, Amen. Yeah, if any one of you at any time wants to join this and make it a little more dynamic, I'm putting the code in the chat right now. So there you have it. In the physical body, the realm of Yasad is it's the gate of dreaming. And on the physical body, that would be the lower Dantian. So that's the elixir field of your psyche. Looks like my stream cut out again, man. What's up? There it is. Okay. I've got a little indicator and it shows the level of connectivity of my stream, and it looks like it's okay right now. So when it's green, then I'm transmitting. All right. So back to basics. When you breathe, you should breathe from Da'at, the hidden gate, right? So that's here, the throat flower. And you breathe down into Yasad. And so inhaling, it occurs this area here. And you inhale all the way down to Yasad, where you activate your psychosexual energy. A single breath. And then circulate it back up to Keter. And it will come down again as you exhale. So that's a single breath on the microcosmic orbit. The three Dantians as represented on the Tree of Life are the lower Dantian, Yasad, the infernal realm. The central Dantian at Tifereth is representative of the material sphere that we live in. And then the upper Dantian, the spiritual realm, the celestial realm, is at Keter. So again, take a breath. Deep inhale, all the way down to Yasad. On the hold, circulate the energy back up to Tifereth. And wow, they're really keep cutting out my feed.
Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Angel was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions and had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at the age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as witnesses said, after having been jostled by a nautical-looking Negro who had come from one of the queer, dark courts on the precipitous hillside which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased's home in Williams Street. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded, after perplexed debate, that some obscure lesion of the heart, induced by the brisk ascent of so steep a hill by so elderly a man, was responsible for the end. At the time I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but latterly I am inclined to wonder, and more than wonder. As my granduncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material which I correlated will be later published by the American Archaeological Society, but there was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling, and which I felt much averse from showing to other eyes. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring which the professor carried always in his pocket. Then indeed I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so, seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked
band Therion is one to listen to if Kabbalah is the thing. Well, not exactly. What I do is a synthesis of Occidental and Oriental mysticism with hints of esoteric Christianity, Rosicrucianism, Freemasonic rites, and ceremonial magic. So basically, the essential path is very, very simple. A division of 3 Dantians within the body, or elixir fields, are where you generate your various energies from. So, 4 Dantian is a couple of finger widths below the belly button and inward. You know, the old hippie revolution of contemplating your belly button, right? Yeah, so it's the balancing point, the gravitational center of the human body, and that's where you breathe to. Utilize the 4-fold breath of Yud He Vahe, the Tetragrammaton. So it's Yud on the inhale, the fire element. Then hold He for 4, and then exhale on the Va, and then hold for 4 again on the final He. So it looks like this. This is how you manifest in the realm of Malkuth. Let me grab a pin and I'll show you. So the 4-letter name, the Tetragrammaton, is the name of the divine spark manifesting in the realm. So some of you are probably it cut out again. Keeps cutting out. They're really messing with me because I don't think there's ever been 10 people in my chat before. This is a record, right? Record amount of activity on my stream today. So they're probably nervous about that. Yeah, good. So we've got the tree of life here, and I'll do it on the back. As you inhale down from Keter, the first element is fire, right? So the 4 Kabbalistic elements are fire, water, air, and earth. So on your first inhale, you've got, oh man, this pin's not working. There's no ink in it. Bummer. All right, give me a second, guys. I gotta grab a pen with some ink. Give me a yo. That'll put the lead in my pencil.
What could be the meaning of the queer clay bas-relief and the disjointed jottings, ramblings, and cuttings which I found? Had my uncle in his latter years become credulous of the most superficial impostures? I resolved to search out the eccentric sculptor responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. The bas-relief was a rough rectangle less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Monsieur Tiedrick, but that would be fun, huh? The more the merrier. I enjoy it. Thank you for joining me here. I remind you, there's a channel announcement. This is the Frank Monday channel. We are doing the live stream coast to coast after party that I like to do on Saturday and Sunday mornings, broadcasting to you live from the Twilight Zone, Old Peking, Central Kingdom of the Celestial Dragon. We've got a lot of good looking people. Discuss. Wow, keeps blacking out. Oh well. I'm discussing the fourfold breath along the Eastern mystery tradition and how to align and stabilize your spirit and soul energy so that you can really start gathering astral light. That way you can do work on the astral plane, the lower and middle astral, as we enter the gates of dreaming. So if you're interested at all in lucid dreaming, stabilizing the spirit, and manifesting real angelic magic in the material sphere, and engaging in the great work of mastery of your faculties and your future creation of yourself in this realm, then tune in weekly, man. I tend to stream. I tend to stream 5, sometimes 6 days a week. Going into the new year, 2022, I will be diligent in taking off the Sabbath, so I can't stream every day. Little shout out to Monsieur Tiedrick, Jeff out there. He is a professor of literature back in the States. I believe Jeff is a retired professor of literature, so he's on the same page as me. That's kind of my gig here in Old Peking. I am a certified ET and English teacher. Guys, make sure to tell your friends and family about Frank Money. Help me grow the channel. I certainly appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you for saying that. And I want to tune in here. Owen is definitely a gem of a man. He's one of the most beautiful bearded bastards. God, they're really messing with my stream today. Lots of good-looking, nice folks out in the chat. Really happy to see you guys. All right, let me get back in here with it and show you what's going on. As long as the stream is stable, I can continue transmitting. We have the Tree of Life on the front, and we're taking a breath. Taking a breath works on the fourfold breath. So you inhale. On the Yud. This is the Hebrew letter. This is the Hebrew letter for Yud, which represents the element of fire. Let me write that out here. Boop, 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 boop. All right. So inhale. The first inhale is on the Yud, and it's a fire breath. So inhale. So you inhale on a count of 4. So it's in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. All right, let me show you what that looks like.
Origin. Its designs, however, were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion, for although the vagaries of cubism and futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic regularity which lurks in prehistoric writing. And writing of some kind, the bulk of these designs seem certainly to be. But my memory, despite much familiarity with the papers and collections of my uncle, failed in any way to identify this particular species, or even to hint at its remotest affiliations. Above these apparent hieroglyphics, you could perceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings, but it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background.
Sorry, guys, I'm back.
Writing accompanying this oddity was, aside from a stack of press cuttings, in Professor Angel's most recent hand, and made no pretense to literary style. What seemed to be the main document was headed Thulu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous reading of a word so unheard of. The manuscript was divided into two sections, the first of which was headed 1925, Dream and Dream Work of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence, Rhode Island, and the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. LaGrasse, 121 Bienville Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. At 1908 AAS meeting, notes on same, and Professor Webb's account. The other manuscript papers were all brief notes, some of them accounts of the queer dreams of different persons, some of them citations from theosophical books and magazines, notably W. Scott Eliot's Atlantis and the Lost Lemuria, and the rest comments on long-surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological source books as Fraser's Golden Bough and Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe. A thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Angel, bearing the singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Design and living alone.
All right. I remind you that's a little H.P. Lovecraft in the background there, the Call of Cthulhu. So I'm going to write this out and show you guys what's going on with the fourfold breath here. So the first breath is a fire breath up here. Whoop. Fire on the inhale. Hold, and it's a water breath. And it looks like this. Hey. Ooh. Yeah, the pop-ups. Let me write it out again. Hold on. Give me a momentito.
At the Fleur-de-Lis building near that institution. Wilcox was a precocious youth of known genius, but great eccentricity, and had from childhood excited attention through the strange stories and odd dreams he was in the habit of relating. He called himself psychically hypersensitive, but the staid folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely queer. Never mingling much with his kind, he had dropped gradually.
All right, so I wrote it there across the top. We've got from the right to left, Yud, Hey, Vav. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. This is leading somewhere, guys. It only takes one breath to get it done, but it takes some time to go through it. I appreciate that, Diane. Thank you for that. I remind you, this is the Frank Monday channel, broadcasting live from the Central Kingdom of Celestial Dragon. Checking out what people are saying here in the chat. People, I think, meant to. I was always in the chat, and I said I was 10, but I believe me, I was 44. They were bullying me, so I can't type. All right, I don't even know what's going on out there in Happy Land anymore. Let me try to catch up a little bit. Reviews were horrendous. There should be like 10 likes now. All right. I like this, definitely. Thank you, Monsieur Tiedrick. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. All that happy horse shit. You guys know I appreciate it. So inhale on the fire breath. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Let's get to that. Let's get to that vowel on the exhale. Try to write this out. Make it a little. And that would be part of the air breath, because you're actually creating and expelling air as you do this. There we go. So now we've got 3 parts of the fourfold breath. Inhale on the fire, in, 2, 3, 4. Hold on the water, 2, 3, 4. And exhale on the vowel, 2, 3, 4. And finally, we're going to hold again at the bottom on the hay. Let me get that on, let me write that down for you.
Social visibility, and was even the Providence Art Club, anxious to preserve its conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. The occasion of the visit, ran the professor's manuscript, the sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphics on the bas-relief.
Well, there is a point to it, Jeff, and it is going somewhere. Let me show you.
Suggested pose and alienated sympathy, and my uncle showed some sharpness in replying, for the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied it was anything but archaeology. And Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record it verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast, which must have typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him. He said, "It is new indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities, and dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylon." It was then that he began that rambling tale, which suddenly played upon a sleeping memory and won the fevered.
Let me get off of J.P. Farrell.
There had been a slight earthquake tremor the night before, the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had had an unprecedented dream of great cyclopean cities, titan blocks, and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister with latent horror. Hieroglyphics had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below had come a voice that was not a voice, a chaotic sensation which only fancy transmute into sound, but which he attempted to render by the almost unpronounceable jumble of letters
Cthulhu
Fatagan.
Cthulhu Fatagan.
This verbal jumble was the key to the recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Angel. He questioned the sculptor with scientific minuteness and studied him. My uncle blamed his old age,
out, man. It's a little bit irritating,
for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphics and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed highly out of place to his visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promises of silence which he was offered in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread mystical or paganly religious body. When Professor Angel became convinced that the sculptor was indeed ignorant of any cult or system of cryptic lore, he besieged his visitor with demands for future reports of dreams. This bore regular fruit, for after the first interview, the manuscript records daily calls of the young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imagery whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean vista of dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice or intelligence shouting monotonously in enigmatical sense impacts, uninscribable save as gibberish. The two sounds most frequently repeated are those rendered by the letters Thulu and Rilye. March 23rd, the manuscript continued, Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters revealed that he had been stricken with an obscure sort of fever and taken to the home of his family in Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and had manifested since then only alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle at once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close watch of the case.
I like that idea a lot, Jeff. I would certainly be, I would have a lot of fun with George Norrie. I don't know if he is actually still active, is as far seems like anytime I start talking, they disconnect me. My stream should be fantastic, man. My Ethernet radio transmitter is right there, like directly across from my laptop, and it still shows that it has trouble connecting. I don't get it. Yeah, if somebody knows George Norrie over at Coast to Coast, definitely tell him that I would be interested in chatting with him about paranormal activity. I've had literally dozens and dozens of my own paranormal and supernatural encounters. I'm pretty well versed in it. I think I've got a pretty good understanding of what's going on. And I utilize Robert Anton Wilson's method of the multi-model approach. So I'm open and malleable in my opinion about what it is. And I think I've explored all of the paranormal explanations for what's going on. So it would be fun to talk about because I leave it really open-ended and am willing to learn both from George's experience and then bring my own experiences forward and possibly interpret and comment on anybody else's experiences from a Taoist perspective, which is Eastern mysticism, as well as an Occidental Western mystery tradition perspective, because I have a very good understanding of that as well. I was raised Lutheran, and I've explored esoteric Christianity, Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, and ceremonial magic for at least 30 years of. Is it possible that YouTube's messing with the stream because of the information you're providing? I think it's possible that they're just messing with my stream because I have over 10 viewers now. So that would be more likely to me than the nature of the information, because there's good channels like Esoterica, which present the very same esoterica. So if you're interested on learning some of the scholarly background about magic and these systems of the Western mystery tradition, you can check out the YouTube channel Esoterica. Dr. Justin Sledge over there is one of the best voices in the community when it comes to Kabbalah and magic. So yeah, I don't think YouTube would mess with me over the topic. Let me have a little look at the chat here and see what's going on in Happy
Often
Land.
at the Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom we learned to be in charge. Youth's febrile mind, apparently, was dwelling on strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but touched wildly on a gigantic thing miles high which walked or lumbered about. He had no time fully described this object, but occasional frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Toby, convinced the professor that it must be identical with the nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream sculpture. Reference to this object.
Just to reiterate, Monsieur Tiedrich's little keeps cutting out. The bastards are throttling my stream. Yeah, that would be a hoot, Jeff. Thanks for that idea. Let me see if I can find a comment out here that might bring the topic full circle a little bit. I remind you, this is the Frank Monday channel, Coast to Coast Afterparty Open House. If you would like to join the conversation with me live, let me know. I'll put the link here in the chat again, just in case you want to. All you have to do is click that link, and that will take you to StreamYard, and then you could literally join me here live, and we could have a conversation. I've got a good amount of time before I've got to run. I've probably got about 30 minutes. So if someone is interested in joining me here on the channel, shoot on over and I'll load you up. Yeah, so Little Fish, I probably wouldn't go down that rabbit hole. Just me personally, I'm trying to avoid verboten topics because I do want my channel to grow over time, and I don't want to be 86th because I of wrong think. So here's the Yud He Vahe, the old Celtic version, right? And so you inhale on the Yud. You've got the Yud. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Hold on the He, water. 2, 3, 4. Exhale on the Va, and you can even see how that works, right? You're exhaling long on the 4, and then hold on the earth element, which directly corresponds with Malkuth. So you're inhaling on the Keter. See if I can get this clearer. Okay, inhale. Exhale through Yasad, 2, 3, 4, and hold at earth, Malkuth, 2, 3, 4. So essentially what that fourfold breath does is it helps you to manifest and stabilize in the material realm, right? Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And you do that 4 times, at least, to stabilize yourself. What that creates, what the Yud He Vahe creates, you can see here. You've got Yud at the top, He at Tifereth, Val, the exhale, at Yasad, and then the final He manifesting in Malkuth. I think you can guess what that is. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. That's the middle pillar. That's what draws it down. Let me show you. Manifestation into the material sphere through a simple breathing exercise. Here's your head. Here are your arms. There's the body and the legs. Let me put a smiley face on that so it's a little more interesting. So now you can really see super clearly what the Yud He Vahe brings about. It is manifestation in the prime. Yeah, I got you, little fish. Yeah, I can't personally say any verboten topics, but I can let them roll out in the comment section. That doesn't bother me at all. Trying to treat it that serious until I get a feeling as happy as possible. Those sickos control. Take that comment down already. I have strikes. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. I was busy. Tracy says hi to Wendy. Hi, Tracy and Wendy. Welcome to the chat. That looks like your ex. How funny. Do you know because of that? Okay, so you can see that the Yud He Vahe manifests as a human figure in the material sphere, inhaling into the fire, a light with the divine spark, the glow in your eyes, inhaling, holding on the water element of He, the emotional realm of the subconscious energy, then exhaling through the full torso, through the Val, right? Through the center Dantian and lower Dantian into Yasad, and then holding, once again, hold the breath at final He, the earth. And here you're directly connected with the earth sphere, which looks like this on the feet. You're directly connected down here at Malkuth. Malkuth, the kingdom. Yasad, the central lower Dantian, sorry. Tifereth, the central Dantian. And Keter, the upper Dantian. So the Eastern mystery tradition All right, I like your question, Jali. Jila. I'll get to it right here in a second. So I'll keep it up there on the board and get to it in a second. Basically, the fourfold breath does this. It manifests and stabilizes your spirit into the material sphere. You inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and then hold, 2, 3, 4. As you go through the fourfold breath, you should have practiced the relaxation ritual so that you know that creating tension in the body and then relaxing is how you stimulate those energies there. So let me show you what it looks like in a yogic practice. You've got inhale, down to the center dantian, hold, exhale, down to the lower dantian, and hold. And then you repeat that process. So in, and out, and hold. In, hold, and out. In. Wow, they're really chopping up my stream today. Last time.
Added was invariably a prelude.
Let me jump on this chat and see what's going on out in Happy Land. I remind you, this is the Frank Monday channel. We are going deep into the realm of Yasad, the astral light. We do this fourfold breath so that we can gather and accumulate our subtle energy. That way, during dreaming, we can use that accumulated energy to penetrate deep into the fathomless cavern of the lower astral. That way, once we start to orient ourselves in the astral light, we'll be able to make progress with our soul development. I lost that question on the chat that I wanted to address. Here we are. So Jali asks, what do you think about black beings not shining any light, even if there's light nearby? He says he saw a child-sized shadow being once that climbed to a tree. Oh, wow. They really don't want to keep my stream stable today. I've never had any problems with it in the past, really. Very few. So, to answer your question here, Smile a While, yeah, you can practice the fourfold breath any time of day, any time of evening. If you're doing it at night before you go to sleep, yeah, just do it. And combine it with the relaxation ritual of tensing and releasing the muscles all throughout the body. Welcome to the chat, Eugene Gu. Thanks for joining us. He says it's his first time and he really enjoys it. So good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Give Me Death or Freedom chimes in. Shadow entities are dangerous. Yeah, here's the thing. As a human being within the material sphere, we have the opportunity to cultivate our divine spark and to keep that light alive within us. And we become more luminescent, and the mind becomes as malleable as a shining pearl. The shadow beings are lower astral entities, oftentimes, some of them even from the infernal realms, and they seek to rob that light and distract you from your great work, to distract you from your cultivation. So, um, if you do encounter a shadow being, like I said, that you mentioned that one, and it was probably one time, one off, then at that time, or that may have been a negative entity within your immediate environment, you can just cast them away from mind. You can send them in their direction to disperse them. There are any number of ways that you can protect yourself from any negative from a shadow entity. Um, you can use any of the God names, right? If you're a Buddhist, you can use the name of Buddha. So, it's in Chinese, it's Na Muami Tofu. You can use that to dismiss any type of entity. If you're an esoteric Christian, you might use the name of Adonai. Um, Adonai. If you're Hebrew and you're Hebrew by birth and Hebrew by practice, and you engage in the great operations of Solomonic magic, you would disperse, most definitely, depending on the level of the entity's negativity. You might use the Yud He Vahe, right? Yod He Vahe, and then use a star, the triangle. You might even trap it in a triangle and then stick it in a gourd later, or a small bottle. And then depends on what you want to do with that being later. Depends on your level of initiation into magic. Um, and of any faith, many oftentimes find success with the name Jesus, right? Jesus Cristo. Uh, that's a possibility. It doesn't work for me. I've tried it. If you're of the school of atheism, right, then you might just use the name of your mother. That one's super effective, especially if you're if you suffer from sleep paralysis and you find yourself being attacked by like the old hag ghost or some other negative entity, if you just call out to your mother, that will break the attack most assuredly. In fact, mother and mama and mom is one of the most powerful words on the spiritual realm, because your mother, oftentimes there's nobody that loves you more than your mother, and it's the source of your physical life in the material sphere. And reconnecting with that, right, whenever someone gets into a really bad situation, they call out to their mom, right? They're like, Mom, save me. When you're a kid, of course, right? Calling for your mama. That is one of the more powerful ways to do it. I've got Give Me Death or Give Me Life out here, has got the Om. The Om works. Yeah, sure. So I'll break it down for you the way it works in my system, my particular system that I'm developing. Volantia is intention. And it all starts with your intent, with your volantia. Decreeism is the commanding out of the chi. So intention, and I'll call it manifestation and invocation, right? And then paucism is a receiving part of the threefold incantation. So I'll give you an
such as to suggest true fever rather than mental disorder. On April 2nd at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox's malady suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed, astonished to find himself at home and completely ignorant of what had happened in dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days. But to Professor Angel, he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly usual visions. Here the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of the scattered notes gave me much material for thought, so much, in fact, that only the ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive.
All right, so I've spelled it out there on the chat window. So if I were encountering one that I thought had ill intent towards me, the first thing you want to do for yourself really is to refocus your own interpretation of that intent. Oftentimes, any type of supernatural or paranormal entity doesn't have a negative intent towards you, even if it is a shadow entity. It's just doing what it does. It's living up to its virtue. And if you've entered into its domain or its realm unprepared, then its virtue may be to attack you and bring you into the realm of shadows with it, right? You might lose your physical life. You could be driving down the road and one could try to pull you off the road or pull you into oncoming traffic and murder you, right? And so that entity doesn't deem that as a bad thing. It deems it as a good thing. Light energy it can feed on. So how is that wrong for that entity to want to do that? What's wrong is that you don't protect yourself with the name of the Lord or with any God name that you partition. And like I said, if you're an atheist, you can still call upon spiritual energy, because it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, right? It's a fact, right? It exists. Spirit is it's the preform of matter. So consciousness is before matter. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, of course, the egg has to come. Everything comes out of the egg, right? So that's why the Catholics will often use the Kabbalistic cross in order to ward off negative energy, because they're trying to illuminate the middle pillar and then cross it so that it gives them a form of protection. You could call upon the Archangel Michael, Raphael, Gabriel to protect the 4 quadrants, right? But the basic equation of Volantia is your intent. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is your intention. So the E, the intent, arises here at the third eye energy within the celestial Dantian. The upper Dantian is known as the Dantian of the celestial energy and connects most directly with your heavenly energy. So you pull up that chi from the lower Dantian, the infernal realm, alchemically transmute it through the cauldron of the 5 solid organs and 6 hollow organs, and then it manifests as E in the third eye, right? Up here at the third eye, the which is connected. It's a manifestation of the celestial Dantian. Oh, wow, it's really cutting out today, man. There's just too many people in the chat for this stream to maintain any type of connection. So 3-step process. Volantia, inhale, summon your E, your intent, decree it, be gone, right? Invoke, and then receive. So the receiving part, this last part, the paucism part of the equation, is just, being confirmedly convinced and knowing that your magic is real and that it worked, and that whatever evil entity was attempting to latch onto you, any parasitic force or anything, is dispersed. And natural magic is just that easy. It doesn't require a complicated set of rituals. It doesn't require any special implements of the art, right? You don't have to have a fancy hat. You don't have to have a dark robe or a Star of David hanging from your neck, right? The seal of Solomon in pure gold in order to be able to do this. All it requires is that you have a pure intention, and you can use your light to disperse any negative light. Human beings are more powerful in the material sphere than any other spiritual entity that could surround us. We can be more powerful than any type of lower demonic force, any type of hungry ghost. We're more powerful than any type of cryptid if our E is awakened and we've stored energy. Now, if you're a wastrel and you engage then the problem is you're manifesting and losing your astral light through the gate of Yasad, right? So when you're manifesting too much of your own ineptitude or laxness in the material sphere, then you lose your energy through the gate of Yasad and you leave yourself open to astral attack. You should do the HGA ritual of communion with your holy guardian angel and have it firmly rooted at the central Dantian, right? Here at the central Dantian, you should have your holy guardian angel there to protect you. And as a child, of course, it always is. But as folks get a little older, then they engage in vice and I won't say sinning because there is no real sin. You know, you're only doing what your virtue entails you to do. So it's not necessarily really wrong for you if for some reason you need it, right? Let me check the. I'll play a little background Lovecraft Call of Cthulhu as I check to see what's going on in the chat room here.
The dreams of various persons covering the same period as that in which young Wilcox had had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seems, had quickly instituted a prodigiously far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all the friends whom he could question without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of their dreams and the dates of any notable visions for some time past. The reception of his request seems to have been varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without a secretary. This appear here and there, always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more affected, though 4 cases of vague descriptions suggest.
Yeah, it looks like Gimme Death or Freedom knows the ultimate secret, right? Iron will with intent and desire is the key to all operations. Yes, so invoke often, invoke daily, invoke quarterly, invoke morning, noon, and night, and inflame yourself with prayer, whatever that prayer may be, right? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil.
Fugitive glimpses of strange landscapes, and in one case there is mentioned a dread of something abnormal. It was from the artists and poets that the pertinent answers came, and I know that panic would have broken loose had they been able to compare notes.
Hey, it looks like Boobies is out in the chat. That's always fun. Good to see you, Tits. Welcome to the chat. All are welcome, you know, one and all. It doesn't, within the concourse of Tao, it doesn't matter. It's each individual needs to find their own pathway to the divine light. And whatever that divine light may be, or whoever you may be, and wherever you may be going, it's you're on your own point in your own path. And so in the teaching that I'm bringing forward, a synthesis of Occidental and Oriental
having asked leading questions or of having edited the correspondence in corroboration of what he had latently resolved to see. That is why I continued to feel that Wilcox, somehow cognizant of the old data which my uncle had possessed, had been imposing on the veteran scientist.
So it is, in this teaching, it is equally applicable to any area of spiritual resource, any area of spiritual research. It's the lower Dantian, the middle Dantian, and the upper Dantian. It's a much more simplified system than the chakra systems. The Dantians are the elixir fields, the generators of energy that feed the chakras and make those things possible. The third eye and all of the other 7 chakra are manifestations of the elixir fields. So we're getting into touch with source energy by pulling it directly down from the Ein Sof Or, from the limitless light, from the North Star.
These responses from aesthetes told a disturbing tale. From February 28th to April 2nd, a large proportion of them had dreamed very bizarre things, the intensity of the dreams being immeasurably the stronger during the period.
Good little question from Little Fish out here. She says, the tree of life on the chakras. Again, this is not a system solely specific to chakra work. This is 3 Dantians and the middle pillar. So the tree of life, the gate of Yesod, Tifereth, and Kether within the human body. Yes, you circulate it. You inhale.
Fourth of those who reported anything reported scenes and half sounds, not unlike those which Wilcox had described, and some of the dreamers confessed acute fear of the gigantic nameless thing visible toward the last. One case, which the note describes with emphasis, was very sad. The subject, a widely known architect with leanings toward theosophy and occultism, went violently insane on the date of young Wilcox's seizure and expired several months later after incessant screamings to be saved from some escape.
All right, Little Fish goes on to say that she found a chart that put the north node at the head and the south node at the feet. Not entirely sure that I understand all of that exactly, but when we contemplate and sit in our stabilized soul form, right, the coagulation, the crystallization of the elixir of immortality within the physical body, giving birth to a spiritual life, is similar to a butterfly coming out of its cocoon, right? So we're cultivating this inward energy of crystallization of the divine spark and intensification of this light. And yes, the top of the head connects with the North Star, and then the Malkuth area, the lower Dantian, and all of this realm, it merges with the past and the present. The energy from above comes down as future experiences, right? That's why we orient to the zodiacal wheel spinning around the crown of the head. The crown is the
denizen of hell.
They keep cutting my
Had
feed,
my uncle
man.
referred to
It's
these
really
cases
frustrating.
by name instead of merely by number, I should have attempted some corroboration and personal investigation.
All right, so visualizing this system is pretty straightforward, pretty easy. At the top, Kether is the North Star, Beidou Xing, with its 7 stars, Draco Major, spinning. The 12 constellations form the etheric and astral crown around the head, right? The 12 zodiac signs spinning around the head. The third eye is inside of that crown. It's within the triangle of art, within the mind. All of those energies align. Daath is the throat flower. I won't get too deep into it, but I'll bring you all the way down into Malkuth. At Tifereth, at the center Dantian, is Give me a second here. At the center Dantian is the great sun and all of the 5 localized planets and the sun and moon, right? The sun and moon. The moon manifesting more down towards lower Yasad, the astral gate. All of this stabilizes and sits upon the Tetragrammaton, the great fourfold name of God, which is a pure golden tablet at your feet, underneath you. You sit upon a throne of divine might and energy, and then you rest within your cultivation. This is and always will be in, are in currently now. It's just having that realization. Enlightenment means waking up to that truth. So, from a visualization aspect of astral energy, that's how it's seen within the system that I'm bringing forward. Any other system may do it a little bit differently. If you're female, then you can sit in quiet contemplation of the High Priestess card from the major arcana of the tarot. If you prefer the Empress card, that's also okay. Or even if you feel like you need extra strength, you can contemplate the 8, the card of strength, Leo, the courage card. For men, it's traditional that you would contemplate either the magician or the emperor or even the Hierophant or the chariot, depending where you are in your alchemical transformations and how old you are and what you need at the time. For personally, I spend a lot of time communing with the first 2 cards of the major arcana of the greater teaching, the Magus and the High Priestess. But again, everyone has their own individual system of path working. So if you'd like to join me, 100-day magical challenge, it just begins with thinking about magic every day. So intention, right? The chi, the 5 forms of the chi with the organs, the cauldron, the workshop of subtle origin, and then the chi of the lower Dantian, and cultivating and using that as your energy source, your root in the material sphere.
But as it was, I succeeded in tracing felt as did this fraction. It is well that no explanation shall ever reach them. Press cuttings, as I've indicated, touched on cases of panic, mania, and eccentricity during the given period. Professor Angel must have employed a cutting bureau, for the number of extracts was tremendous, and the sources scattered throughout the globe. Here was a nocturnal suicide in London, where a lone sleeper had leaped from a window after a shocking cry. Here likewise a rambling letter to the editor of a paper in South America, where a fanatic deduces a dire future from visions he has seen. A dispatch from California describes a Theosophist colony as donning white robes en masse for some glorious fulfillment which never arrives, whilst items from India speak guardedly of serious native unrest toward the end of March. Voodoo orgies multiply in Haiti, and African outposts report ominous mutterings. American officers in the Philippines find certain...
Yeah, so Anthony here, I don't believe this is OG Anthony. I think it's a fake Anthony, but he points out that he thinks I needed better internet. Yeah, it's really got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with the fact that we've got 12 plus people in the chat this morning. So nobody likes competition, and the big corporate entities over at BoobTube, they don't want anybody stepping on their toes. So they'll throttle my stream no matter what. And it's because I have a larger level of participation today. That's all it's got to do with.
Tribes bothersome about this time, and New York policemen are mobbed by hysterical Levantines on the night of March 22nd to 23rd. West of Ireland, too, is full of wild rumor and legendary, and a fantastic painter named Ardois Bonneau hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in the Paris spring salon. solved, and I can at this date scarcely envisage the callous rationalism with which I set them aside. But I was then convinced that young Wilcox had known of the older matters mentioned by the professor. 2. The Tale of Inspector Legrasse. Older matters which had made the sculptor's dream and bas-relief so significant to my uncle formed the subject of the second half of his long manuscript. Once before, it appears, Professor Angel had seen the hellish outlines of the nameless monstrosity, puzzled over the unknown hieroglyphics, and heard the ominous syllables which can be rendered only as Hulu. And all this in so stirring and horrible a connection that it is small wonder he pursued young Wilcox with queries and demands for data. The earlier experience had come in 1908, 17 years before, when the American Archaeological Society held its annual meeting in St. Louis. Professor Angel, as befitted one of his authority and attainments, had had a prominent part in all the deliberations, and was one of the first to be approached by the several outsiders who took advantage of the convocation to offer questions for correct answering and problems for expert solution. The chief of these outsiders, and in a short time the focus of interest for the entire meeting, was a commonplace-looking, middle-aged man who had traveled all the way from New Orleans for certain special information unobtainable from any local source. His name was John Raymond Legrasse, and he was by profession an inspector of police. With him he bore the subject of his visit, a grotesque, repulsive, and apparently very ancient stone statuette, whose origin he was at a Legrasse had the least interest in archaeology. On the contrary, his wish for enlightenment was prompted by purely professional considerations. The statuette, idol, fetish, or whatever it was, had been captured some months before in the wooded swamps south of New Orleans during a raid on a supposed voodoo meeting, and so singular and hideous were the rites connected with it that the police could not but realize that they had stumbled on a dark cult totally unknown to them and infinitely more.
Yeah, Jeff, I'll have to try to figure that out. How do I check? It says my connection is unstable if you're on Wi-Fi. Try plugging your router in or moving closer to it. Okay, so maybe if I run a cable to my computer and have it directly connected to the Wi-Fi, that'll work better in the future. I'll look into doing that. Right now, I'm streaming from my laptop, and I am doing it over Wi-Fi, so that might be part of the problem.
Symbolic than even the blackest of the African voodoo circles. Of its origin, apart from the erratic and unbelievable tales extorted from the captured members, absolutely nothing was to be discovered. It's the anxiety of the police for any antiquarian lore which might help them to place frightful symbol and through it track down the cult to its fountainhead. Inspector Legrasse was scarcely prepared for the sensation which his offering created. One sight of the thing had been enough to throw the assembled men of science into a state of tense excitement, and they lost time in crowding around him to gaze at the diminutive figure whose utter strangeness and air of genuinely abysmal antiquity hinted so potently at unopened and archaic vistas. No recognized school of sculpture had animated this terrible object, yet centuries and even thousands of years seemed recorded in its dim and greenish surface of unplaceable stone. The figure, which was finally face was of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and fore feet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, was of a somewhat bloated corpulence and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or pedestal covered with undecipherable characters. The tips of the wings touched the back edge of the block. The seat occupied the center, whilst the long, curved claws of the doubled-up, crouching hind legs gripped the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down toward the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward, so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of huge forepaws, which clasped the croucher's elevated knees. The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly fearful because its source was so totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was
Yeah, I'd like to comment on this for a moment. I think my stream is probably better now, more stable. Let me know if you can hear me out in Happy Land. Give Me Death or Freedom says that he thinks this may be a culling tactic, and I have to agree with that. If you haven't checked it out already, you should jump over and have a look at one of the professors from the Hawaii.org website. He wrote an article a few years back, I think probably a couple of decades ago, and the title of the article is Democide. Here, I'll put it in the chat. I had definitely improved the stability of the connection a second ago. Now it's, yeah, there it goes. Now it looks good again. Let me see, where'd that go? Oh, it didn't load. See if they'll let me load this comment. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so there was an article written by a guy over at hawaii.edu where he talks about the situation of the 20th century. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Democide. And the essential idea is this, that government kills, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately, right? So that's kind of the situation, the way it works. I'll pull the screen up here for you guys. Here we go. All right, I'm going to try to screen share. Let me know if you can screen share, if you're seeing my screen. If so, give me a yo out in Happy Land if you can see and hear my screen. I'll try to pop myself in here. No, that's not the one I want. This is the one I want. Yeah, guys, I'm going to have to definitely get an Ethernet cable and just connect my laptop directly to the internet thing. That way I won't have these problems in the future. Thanks for bearing with me through all the technical difficulties. Give me a yo if you can see my screen and you can hear me, and then I'll proceed. Like to see those yos? That'll put the lead in your pencil. Come on, let me see some yos out in Happy Land. Can you hear me all right? Is my screen showing? Hello, hello, hello. Yes or no, guys? Give me a yo. All right, I see yos. Good, good, good. Appreciate those yos.
Yet not one.
All right, here we go. Okay, so democide, according to the Google search here, if you can see my screen, let me know. Democide is the murder of any person or people by their government, including genocide, politicide, and mass murder. I'll pull this one up here. Democide is a concept proposed. Let me check it. All right, looks like it's probably looking good. Democide is a concept proposed by American political scientist Rudolf Rummel to describe the intentional killing or high command, right? Just following orders, they say. You can find the original article over here at hawaii.edu. Power kills. The political scientist Rudolph, try to grab his name again. So Rudolph Rummel wrote this article about lethal politics and mass murders in the 20th century. And his general idea was that that's what they do. That's the essential operation of government, is to kill people. Even though they don't necessarily do it intentionally, it's just what they do. So his article is here at hawaii.edu. Power kills. I looked over and through it a couple of decades ago, and it takes quite a bit of time to, I mean, it's a 1990s style website. Obviously, you can see that, right? So it's not the best presentation of the information, but it's all here. Pray tell me, my brother, why do dictators kill and make war? Is it for glory, for things, for beliefs, for hatred, for power? Yes, but more, because they can. So that's basically the be more vicious by the global elite than any other century in history. Freedom is a basic human right recognized by international treaties and is the heart of social justice. Freedom is an engine of economic and human development. Freedom ameliorates the problem of mass poverty. Free people do not suffer from and have never had famines, and by theory should not. Freedom is therefore a solution to hunger and famine. Free people have the least internal violence, turmoil, and political instability. Free people have virtually no government genocide and mass murder, and for good theoretical reasons. Freedom is therefore a solution to genocide and mass murder, the only practical means of making sure that it never happens again. Free people do not make war on each other, and the greater the freedom within two nations, the less violence between them. Freedom is a method of nonviolence. The most peaceful nations are those whose people are free. The purpose of this website, then, is to make it widely available as possible. The theories, works, results, and data that empirically and historically support the conclusions about freedom. Freedom is the answer. To those not yet living in freedom, who suffer from repression, regime-made famine, torture, gulags, and fear for their lives and those of their loved ones. And thanks to the internet, have reached this homepage. So freedom's the answer, guys. I mean, I don't know how much more easy it needs to be that free people do not wage war on each other. Free people do not allow their government to drive a false dichotomy between any class of people, whether it be based on race, black versus white. That's a false dichotomy created by government. Whether it be religion, spirit versus atheist, that's a false dichotomy created by government. whether it be the level of preparedness for something they in fact created, right? Like the new false dichotomy of the vaxxed versus the unvaxxed. We don't need to pair off against each other on political sides of the fence, right? Whether it be liberal or conservative, Democratic or Republican. All false dichotomies are created by institutions seeking to enslave and ultimately murder us. That's a fact. Power kills, and ultimate power kills completely. That's why the forefathers of the United States created a democratic republic where they sought to divide the power of states among three regions.
Did it any known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed to any other time? Totally separate and apart, its very material was a mystery. For the soapy greenish-black stone with its golden or iridescent flecks and striations resembled nothing familiar to geology.
Yeah, I'm just going to put my computer the way I like it, man. If it either connects or it doesn't, I'll try to get myself an Ethernet cable so that in the future I won't have this problem. But I'm suspicious that even if I had an Ethernet cable, it would still be somewhat problematic. I mean, we're going on a 2-hour transmission this morning. I need to wrap this up pretty quick, though, guys. I think that I can go another 20 minutes. So if you've got any questions or concerns, put them in the chat down in the ideas room now in all capitals. So questions in all capitals. I remind you, this is the Frank Monday Coast to Coast After Party. We are transmitting from the Central Kingdom of the Celestial Dragon, Twilight Zone Old Peking. Thank you for joining the channel. Please give me the goose. This is called a goose, right? When you stick a thumb up someone's bum, that's to goose them. So make sure you guys hit the goose on the way out, or hit it now or whenever. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel. I mean, I appreciate that. If you're interested in weekly transmission. Yeah, so topic says variety as Jewish mysticism, the Western mystery tradition, the UFO observer phenomena, cryptids, the practice of magic in your daily life, the science of spirit, theosophy, anthroposophy, Taoism, esoteric Christianity, Rosicrucianism, and all are welcome, whether you be a pagan, a Christian, or a Jew, or any other branch of philosophy or inquiry. All are welcome on the Frank Monday channel. I am biased and bigoted towards none. The Tao, they say, is like the mother of all rivers. And why is she the mother of all rivers? Because she puts herself below them and thus is able to accept all streams into herself. All right, it looks like we might have a question out here in Happy Land. Ji La asks, what can be something running a long stretch in roof in a couple of seconds? Yeah, most cryptids can manifest through a bubble of energy, like an orb of blue-gray, whitish, electrified magnetism, and then they will move very quickly. Within a couple of seconds, the encounter will typically last. So yeah, they can shoot across the roof, but so can a squirrel. So yeah, it could be one of those the Mothman typically moves pretty fast like that. Silver Fox asks, what do you know about Atlantis? And my honest response there would be very little to nothing, not to little. In my system of Tao and understanding of Occidental and Oriental mysticism, the only thing that's important is right now. So it's very possible that if you're interested in Atlantis and you consider yourself maybe to be a reincarnated Atlantean being, then you may still be manifesting in Atlantis. Who's to say that Atlantis isn't all around you right now? I don't know much about it, though, honestly. I haven't done a lot of research into Atlantis. It doesn't seem to personally concern me on my path. But it is a part of the Temple of Astarte tradition, Mu, Lemuria, and Atlantis. So as a neophyte of the Church of Hermetic Sciences, I will be looking more into it. We got a question here from Give Me Death or Give Me Freedom. He says, what are your thoughts on Jordan Maxwell's conclusion that Lucifer is actually Jesus, both referenced as the morning star? That's a good question. Is Jesus Christo a re-manifestation of the Luciferian doctrine? So going way back, I believe we would have Osiris and Baal, and then Mercury, and even further back, Thoth from the that stream cutting out is really irritating me. So Thoth, the god of magic, manifesting through Mercury, and Hermes Trismegistus manifesting through Moses manifesting through Jesus, through Christ, and John the Baptist. Christ said he was the reincarnation of Ezekiel. Ezekiel connects to Enoch. So I don't know. I would have to do more research. Spiritually, I don't feel a direct connection. I think that the Christ consciousness is more on the pillar of mercy. Yeah, but so is Lucifer. You'll have to let me ponder that one for some time. But thank you for the question. Give me death or give me freedom. Monsieur Tiedrick asks, Frank, can you go into depth with the differences with Atlantis and Lemuria? As I am not much of a scholar into either of those areas because I don't find them necessarily relevant to my current path of research into the astral light and the etheric bodies and manifesting Shin or spirit on the prime material plane. But it is in the material that I'm currently researching, so could be in a forthcoming show, right? We could look more into it in the future. I don't see any other questions here. If you got a question, guys, put them all in caps, please. I'd say I can go about another 10 minutes here with you guys, and then I got to start cleaning the kitchen and getting ready for the day. It is already 9 a.m. here in Twilight Zone, Old Peking. I'm not familiar with Jordan Maxwell either, but I'll have to look into it.
Mineralogy. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present, despite a representation of half the world's expert learning in this field could form the least notion of even the remotest linguistic kinship. They, like the subject and material, belong to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it, something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles.
Let me check, little fish. Maybe because your name made it manifest, but I saw a little carp with bulgy eyes swimming around in front of me. So that's what I saw when I closed my eyes, little fish. All right, Monsieur Tiedrick says, theory on Nordic aliens. Are they human? Why do they look like us? The UFO observer from phenomena is a co-created consciousness. So we never have a UFO observation without an
apart. And yet, as the members severally shook their heads and confessed defeat at the inspector's problem, there was one man in that gathering who suspected a touch of bizarre.
All right, stream looks good. So the interpretation of the divine light, the celestial forces, by the observer, right, the subjective part, is, I think, influential in how those things manifest to each individual person. So Nordic aliens, Hyperborea, subterranean areas of the earth, those are all good areas of exploration and definitely the very kind of thing that this channel is interested in. But rather than basing it on what's already been written about and talked about in popular media, I would like to know if you have a direct paranormal encounter with some of those things, then bring it forward in the future to the channel. I myself have not had contact with Nordic aliens.
Familiarity in the monstrous shape and writing, and who presently told with some diffidence of the odd trifle he knew. This person was the late William Channing Webb, professor of anthropology in Princeton University and an explorer of no slight note. Professor Webb had been engaged 48 years before in a tour of Greenland and Iceland in search of some runic inscriptions which he failed to unearth.
Yeah, UFO lights that look like a lighthouse light. That's interesting. I don't have any kind of info on that particular one. I have seen
Degenerate Eskimos, whose religion, a curious form of devil worship, chilled him with its deliberate bloodthirstiness and repulsiveness. It was a faith of which other Eskimos knew little,
but I could tell you about an experience I had here at the Bell and Drum Tower. I saw a fairy light in the sky. I was out walking one moonless evening in north of the Forbidden City here in Beijing, and a little flame, a little ball of flame manifested in the sky, and it looked like a firework at first. I thought that somebody had launched some fireworks, but it was just a little flaming ball of beautifully red fire, and it was floating across the sky, very slow and very stable. And I now refer to it as a fairy light, like a fairy fire. And I had a cheap little, this was like 20 years ago, probably right when I had first arrived in Beijing. And I was out actually looking for spiritual phenomena because I'm always on the lookout. But I had a little cheap candy bar Sony phone in my pocket, and I took several pictures of it, and I did get like a little dot on the screen. But I thought, this is never going to fucking work. So I just put the phone back in my pocket and started to engage with the phenomenon directly rather than trying to film and photograph it because the camera on the phone was just terrible. These days, I'd probably have better luck. But whenever you're around that type of spiritual phenomena, oftentimes there's a kind of apotheum. Sorry about the poor connection, guys. Yeah, so whenever that type of spiritual phenomena occurs, oftentimes apotheum, which is time dilation, will also come into play. And that also seems to have a very direct effect on the function of electronic devices and some sort of electromagnetic interference. Anyways, the fairy fire floated across the sky, nice and slow, nice and steady, and I was able to observe it. But as I observed it, I could feel merging with it, and I could feel myself floating around it as if it were a star of energy, and I had become a small spirit and was floating around this thing. Then I back into my body, and I felt myself. And there was another passerby on the road with me walking by, and he wasn't looking up at it. So I made a signal to the guy walking by, and I'm like, "Hey, bro." He was like looking at his phone. He was walking by NPC style down at his phone, and I pointed up at the sky, and I'm like, "Look up at that." You know, and my Chinese was very basic at the time, and I'm like, "Can you see that?" Yeah, it was like a flaming ball of energy, maybe this big around and approximately 100 feet away from me and floating in the sky. And so frustrating, constantly being disconnected. Anyway, what can you do? So he looks up at it and he's like, yeah, he gives me confirmation that he can see it. And then I'm like, Drishashama, what is it? And he just shakes his head like, I don't fucking know. And then he goes right back to looking at his phone and continuing to walk. And the bafflement within me of like, here's a genuine spiritual phenomena occurring in the sky. And this guy doesn't even give a fuck and just keeps walking. And so I stand there and I'm thinking, okay, it'll just be a one-off thing. And it continues to float off into the distance, right? And as it floats out of and away from my field of vision, another one comes into the sky and floats by and gives me about the exact same amount of time, like 10 or 15 seconds, to observe it and interact with it as it floats by. It happened again like a time loop, and another guy walks by, and I try to make this guy aware of it too, and he does the same fucking thing. He just ignores me and keeps on walking, confirms that he sees it, and then just shakes his head and keeps on walking. This happens approximately 4 or 5 times. I can't remember exactly. But each time it happened, I interacted with all of them a little bit spiritually, like projected my spirit up to it and around it and like circled around it and felt its warmth and observed its fire and clarity and penetrating energy directly. And even yeah, kind of a bummer, guys. I don't know what I could do. I try to move my computer and it seems like it gets stronger for a second and then it doesn't. So it may just be I'm going to need to get an Ethernet cable in the future. Anyway, to summarize this story really quickly. So it happened like 4 or 5 times. And each time I interacted with the little fairy fire and even had like some brief telepathic communication with it. And it it had like a really playful, light, fiery energy. And like when I communicated with it, it was just like playful and friendly. And after it happened like 4 or 5 times with the fairy flyers floating through the sky, I quickly got back into my own like stabilization of my spirit and closed my eyes and could still see them, all 4 or 5 of them floating in the sky. And then when I opened up my eyes, all like 4 or 5 were in a perfect line stretching out from the very beginning one floating off into the distance, and then the other 4 or 5 that were following it and likewise floating off into the distance. And I stayed there and I observed until they were gone. And after they were gone, the sky had assumed a kind of Stygian blackness where all I could see were those little fairy fires. And then it like the egg of energy that had surrounded me kind of dissipated and the apotheum was gone. The time dilation was gone. And like the stars started I returned to like the mediocrity of the status quo of daily life, and everything just kind of went back to normal. And after reflecting on it, I realized that it was a genuine spiritual phenomena. What was it and what does it mean? I don't really have any answers, but I have the experience and it's more confirmation to me about spiritual phenomena. And I have so many encounters with spiritual phenomena, and I've never really sat around and tried to overanalyze them, because I'll tell you why. I don't think the human mind is meant to try to overanalyze these things. And I don't think we're actually, a lot of times, we're not even supposed to bring them forward as spiritual stories, because they might confuse or mislead other people. So a lot of times I don't bring some of these valuable spiritual stories forward, but I feel that as I become more confident in my own transmission of the idea, that I won't cause confusion or obfuscation to others, then I think that it can be appropriate. But it's just a response to your question, Gila. Let me see if there are any other questions out in Happy Land. Yeah, so little fish, when I closed my eyes, all I could see was a little fish swimming around. Little shout out to Give Me Death or Freedom. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for being in the ideas room today, guys. I'll go back through the chat and I'll review it and see if there's anything I missed, and then I'll leave it in the comments for the video. Guys, I'll definitely get myself an Ethernet cable in the future. It seems not only just to be my internet, but also my VPN keeps shifting off. So it may be this time of day, and it may be that it's the new year. I think there are a number of factors, but I do believe that an Ethernet cable will help in the future.
They mentioned only with shudders, saying that it had come down from horribly ancient eons before ever the world was made. Besides nameless rites and human sacrifices, there were certain queer hereditary rituals addressed to a supreme elder devil or Tornasuk, and of this Professor Webb had taken a careful phonetic copy from an aged Angakok or wizard priest, expressing the sounds in Roman letters as best he knew how. But just now of prime significance was the fetish which this cult had cherished, and around which they danced when the aurora leaped high over the ice cliffs. It was, the professor stated, a very crude bas-relief of stone, comprising a hideous picture and some cryptic writing, and so far as he could tell, it was a rough parallel in all essential features of the bestial thing now lying before the meeting. This data received with suspense and astonishment by the assembled members, proved doubly exciting to Inspector Legrasse, and he began at once to ply his informant with questions. Having noted and copied an oral ritual among the swamp cult worshippers his men had arrested, he besought the
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Are we back online? If we're back online, give me a yo if you can see me. All right, looks like everyone's pretty much cleared out of the chat room. Thank you for joining me today on the Frank Monday channel, the Coast to Coast Afterparty open house. Next time I will, hopefully I'll have an Ethernet cable installed by next time so that I don't have so much trouble with my internet. But I realize that it's not only my internet, but it's also my VPN. My VPN's been bumping in and out. And so maybe it has to do with something of the time of day or the amount of traffic, who knows. But just real quick to sign off with Little Fish's question here about fairy fire. Little Fish says she would like to see fairy fire. And if you do, and you genuinely have that intention and you want to commune with a fiery, celestial little fun kind of being, I suggest trying the 2-week method of just going outside every day in the evening time around the witching hour. I mean, if you have the time, then get out there in the evening. It could be even any time after sundown, but just be regular about the exact time that you go out. Say you choose 8:30 at night, 9:30 p.m. or 11:30 or whatever. Make sure that you go out at the same time every day for 2 weeks for about 20 minutes doing a little sky gazing. And if you're religious about it and you go out every evening, you will in fact see them. It may not manifest exactly the same way it did for me, but it will definitely happen. I learned that technique from Radio Mysterioso a few years ago, and it works. Thanks for tuning in, Diane. I appreciate you coming by. I hope the transmission wasn't too shaky for everyone. I'm gonna have to go back and check it. It says we did 2 hours, but how much of that will load to YouTube, I'm not sure. So who knows what's up with YouTube? It could be my VPN. It could be the fact that I don't have a good Ethernet cable and am on Wi-Fi, but I'll have to investigate better when I host these parties in the future. Thanks for the shout out, Monsieur Tiedrick. Jeff, I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone tuning in today. And I hope you all are doing well out in Happy Land. Pisces Squared Power Man. I appreciate that, Little Fish. And thanks for joining in, guys. Say hello to your daughter for me, Little Fish. I certainly appreciate that. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to everyone out there in Happy Land. Y'all good looking, sexy people, stay well out there. Keep on keeping on. Build your spirit. Invoke often. Inflame yourself with prayer, as above, so below, into the abodes of the future. Yeah, hopefully it's been helpful to you. Again, there aren't always easy answers to every question. And that's what this channel is all about, is paranormal research and investigation of the spiritual. So thank you for tuning in. Please hit the cold goose thumb on your way out, and take care of yourselves. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022, and let's get on with the great work. Good magic, everyone. You know, it says end broadcast, but it never truly ends.